Eliana, your career upgrade framework has helped thousands break free from career dissatisfaction. What financial and emotional patterns do you notice in clients who are stuck in careers that aren't serving them?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the biggest ones is the golden handcuffs, right? And I'm sure this is something you've heard of. It's probably been discussed before, but it's the idea that sometimes you're in this role where you're actually getting paid quite nicely, right? It's competitive. It's giving you what you've always wanted and desired on paper, but then you're feeling all this self-doubt and questioning yourself because you're going, I'm getting paid what I want to get paid, but I feel so unhappy where I am. What's wrong with me, right? And it's like this imposter syndrome. It's this self-doubt. It's these feelings of guilt around why am I not more appreciative of what I have if I'm getting paid what I want to get paid? And that can create just a lot of conflict and a lot of discontent and confusion among clients. So I'd say it's like that golden handcuff situation that causes a lot of the mindset difficulties that people experience.
How often do you see, because, do you see people struggle and go, this is what I was supposed to do. I was a good girl or boy. I got my education or I got my training and I have this job. So I did what I was supposed to do,
Yeah.
but I'm still miserable or I'm not satisfied or I feel like there's something more. How often do you see people struggling with well, I did what I was supposed to do, so why am I feeling this way issue?
I would say that's almost every single client that we work with, right?
Wow.
And that pain point is really what drives people to seek support. And it's exactly as you described. Overly ambitious, high achievers, good at their jobs, went to college, got the degree, landed the job quickly out of school. And now they've spent, call it 5 to 10 years working. And again, on paper, it's all looking good, but they're going, why do I not feel good about this? And it's such a natural feeling to have. And I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about why that might arise and why people experience that. But that is the most common pain point that I see among people.
Well, why do you think that happens? Yeah.
I think that what often happens is we kind of throughout life, we're taught these ideas and definitions of success, right? It's our parents tell us, go get a good education, go make money, right? It's what we see people doing on social media, what our friends are doing. So we operate very robotically throughout our careers and kind of just do what we think we're supposed to do. And so often when we're in college, we don't know what we want to do with the rest of our lives, right? We think, I don't know what my major should be, but I'm just going to do marketing because that seems like it makes sense. Or my dad told me to do econ, right? Where there's a lot of messaging that's reinforced to us. And so because of that, we graduated with a marketing degree. So we go land a role as a marketing manager because that seems like a natural extension, right? And we're kind of just going through the motions of things without ever really pausing and stopping. So we're really going through the motions of things without ever pausing and stopping and saying, wait, is this actually what I want to be doing? And before we know it, we're, 8 to 10 years in our career and then kind of coming to this inflection point of saying, everything we just talked about before. I'm making money. I'm doing what I always thought I should be doing, but I don't really feel happy. And that's really because of how we've been operating and because we've never really taken the time to stop and say, but what do I actually want? What gets me excited? Where am I engaged, right? What are the values that are important to me, not to my parents, not to my friends, but what is it that I really want? So that causes a lot of those feelings. You're good. Don't worry. I'm forgetting that you can hear me. I'm like muting myself. I'm like, you can hear me. I just can't hear you. It's all good.
I wonder if they're in the tile cutting phase of this renovation.
Sounds like they might be.
Yeah, because I'm waiting for like a pause, and there's just no pause because
Mm-hmm.
drought never ends.
Right.
I mean, I do have stuff that takes out the background noise. So
Right.
I do run it. I run it through two different filters. Can you hear it really loud right now?
No, I mean, I can sometimes it's a little louder than others, but it's not overbearing or anything.
Okay. Okay. Because it's like, I mean, it's like shaking me. So that's good. Okay. So, I'll do what I need to do. And if I may, I'm going to mute myself as soon as I stop talking. And then when I run it through my systems, if I can hear it, I'll just record the question separately and piece it
Sure.
together.
That's
Okay.
fine. That works for
Okay.
me. Yeah.
I can see how people feel like kind of like that guilt or this like weight on them of I did what I was supposed to do, or we have this pressure from our parents, or not even pressure like, oh, my parents told me to go do this, or they said, hey, you'd be really good at XYZ, and you
Yeah.
don't want to disappoint. And I was having this conversation. My daughter's 14, she's going into high school next year, and what the resources available to them are amazing now,
Yeah.
and the classes available and all of that. So she had to pick her schedule for next year, her first semester in high school. And
Mhm.
already they're kind of guiding you of what career do you want. And
Yeah.
my husband and I were sitting down, we were talking to her, we're like, Olivia, this is kind of crazy, but like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she's like, I don't know. I'm 13. Like, she was 13 at
Yeah.
the time. I'm like, I know, like this, I feel ridiculous even asking
Right.
you this, but like that points us into the direction of what classes you should be taking
Yeah.
for high school. And so, I mean, and in I mean, there's so many people that, especially what that I went to college with, that were undecided for a long time, right, throughout
Right.
college. So I almost could imagine that this feeling is going to be even worse 10 years
Mhm.
from now, right? Of,
Mhm.
well, I thought I always wanted to be an engineer. Like all my high school classes were engineering, and it's like,
Right.
how does a 13-year-old even know what an engineer it is or does,
Exactly.
right? So what do you say to that person that just like can't get past the fact of like, I was a good boy, I was a good girl, I did what I was supposed to do, and now I'm not happy about it?
Yeah. And yeah, it's such a good point. And it's the pressure I feel like I have 5-year-olds who aren't even experiencing that yet, but it's just like the pressure. Where do you go to school? Where do you do this? Right. It's crazy what we're putting on kids at such a young age. And I think it's so important to, remind people, especially like you said, when we're in the golden handcuff situation and we're going, oh my God, but I did this. Was this the right thing? Is we always have to reframe it, right? Let's just say you pick the career, going with that marketing example. You became a marketing manager, or you're working in customer success, whatever it is, and you're going, I've been doing this for a number of years now, and this just isn't feeling right. Rather than feeling bad or upset or guilty about that, we have to reframe it and think, okay, well, this is a learning opportunity. Why does this not feel right? What about it do I not feel connected to? Is it because I'm not leaning into the strains that I feel come most naturally to me? Is it because I feel like I actually kind of like what I do, but it's the environment that I'm working in that I don't like, right? Maybe I have a poor relationship with my manager. Maybe the specific product that I'm focused on here is just not a product that I feel connected to. So every situation presents learning opportunities. So in that moment when we want to be like downcast and so upset and pointing blame at ourselves, it's really thinking about what is the learning opportunity here and how can I leverage this data that I'm going to collect about myself in this moment in terms of how I think about moving forward ultimately. I can't hear you. Muted.
We talked about like kind of the emotional stress, like the pressure and kind of the unnecessary pressure we put on ourselves. But how does the financial stress impact career decisions? And what mindset shifts have you found most powerful in breaking that cycle?
Yeah. Well, I think what happens from the financial perspective is when we talk about that situation where you're in a lucrative role, and at that point, right, you've probably been working for a number of years, so you get used to a certain type of lifestyle, right? And then you assume that if I change paths, whatever that might look like, I'm probably going to have to take some type of a pay cut, and then I'm not going to be able to afford my life anymore. And then again, that's what leads specifically to the golden handcuffs when you're staying in a role because of how well you're getting paid despite the fact that you're unhappy. So in these situations, it's so important to remember and remind yourself that just because you make a change from where you are right now, that does not necessarily mean that you need to take a pay cut, right? I think that is like the first thing that we have to remind ourselves. People assume if I change my career at any point, I have to start over, and therefore I am going to have to significantly take a step back financially. But the goal is always to think about, okay, how can I make a thoughtful and strategic decision about how I move forward, leveraging what I have already built, the transferable skills that I have, so that I can potentially make more of a lateral move, right? Where I'm maintaining my salary. Or if I'm taking somewhat of a pay cut, it's a short-term pay cut and there'll be more growth potential where I go, right? So it's that notion of a trade-off. I can either have the career that I love or I can get paid really well. And that is what forces people to choose. And it's recognizing we don't always have to choose. We can create ways where both of those things are available to us.
So tell me about, with your career upgrade framework, how you help people align their career with both their values and their financial goals.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll kind of walk you through the steps of that process and where kind of the values piece comes in and the financial goals as well. So the first thing that we always do is focus what I like to call uncover. And this is all around your mindset. We've been touching on this already, but truthfully, your mindset and the beliefs that you have about yourself impact you far more than anything else when it comes to, tactical changes or strategies that you're making or strategies that you're pursuing when you're thinking about changing your career. So foundationally, we really want to get clear on what are all of the beliefs that you have about your finances, about what you're capable of and what you're not capable of that are actually self-sabotaging you before you make any moves, right? Do you believe that, again, you have to sacrifice, salary for a career you love? Do you believe that, as a woman, you're always going to be paid less, right? Like, what are the beliefs that you have that are impacting your success potential and your financial potential? So we always, always, always start there. And then in the second part of the framework, we move into alignment. And this is all about gaining clarity on how you move forward. What are the career paths that make most sense for me based on a few things? Based on where I'm most engaged in my career thus far, where I'm disengaged in my career, where I'm operating in my zone of genius, where I get into states of flow, which is basically like getting into zones of very deep work where I'm super engaged in the work I'm doing, and then based on what values are important to me, right? So values, you were just touching on it before. Most people aren't aware of what their career values are, but what we're talking about here are things like, do I value creativity? Do I value autonomy? Do I value collaboration? Do I value adaptability, right? What are the core values that are most important to me? And for some, you might even say like, I value compensation to a degree. Like that is what's most important to me at this point in my life, right? So it's thinking about those values that are most important to you and how you then think about, okay, what are the non-negotiables that are most important to me in my next role? What are the nice to haves that are most important to me in my next role? And kind of balancing all of that with what are my transferable skills and my strengths in terms of the roles that I can actually do. And then of those, what is the path to being able to, maintain or grow my salary in the future? So that's the second step. It's like really, it's almost like a self-auditing process of really understanding what do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? What's most important to you so that you can then take that information and align it with the proper opportunities moving forward. So that's the second step. And then the third step, we get into more strategic elements around networking strategies and making sure your resume and your LinkedIn are in a great place, right? That it's reflecting those transferable skills, that it's reflecting the strengths that you have so that you can still make more lateral moves or even vertical moves and be able to grow your salary. And then the fourth phase is really around interview strategy and of course negotiation tactics, which are going to be incredibly important when we think about, maintaining the financial opportunities and the salaries that we're looking for. So I'll pause there, but that's a little bit about the process and how we think about it.
Do you find that there's like a year that someone starts reevaluating or comes to you? Like, is someone, we talk about like the 7-year itch in marriages or something like that. Is there an itch as far as someone's career goes, or is it turning a certain age? What do you find that there's a time frame that people come to you looking for help?
I do. I find that it's obviously much more prominent among millennials than it is Gen Zers who are still earlier on in your career. But I'd say there's a little bit of a tipping point that happens as you're approaching 30 or even in your early 30s, where again, it makes sense. At this point, you're approaching almost a decade of being in the workforce, if not already at a decade, and you're going, wow, I've just spent the past 10 years doing XYZ. And I'm kind of realizing, I don't know if I want to do this for another decade, right? So I find that that's a very common time frame where a lot of these thoughts and feelings start coming up. All good.
If you're working with someone that is, I'm money focused, like I'm willing to sacrifice to make money, or benefits or stock options or whatever it is, like I'm willing to, grit my teeth and like bear through it. How do you help someone find though that like enough, like, okay, what's the number, what's the benefit, what's the thing that gets you there, and then like where's the tipping point?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned too benefits, right? And all those types of things. So I think too, when we think about compensation and negotiation and making career changes, we get so focused on kind of like our specific number and comp. And there's so many other ways to be able to, get benefits from a financial perspective, right? And sometimes when you are making a pivot, yes, maybe you're saying, ooh, I'm taking a little bit of a haircut from the base salary perspective, but I have way better benefits here, right? So it's really thinking about that full package. And then, sorry, could remind me specifically, do you mind just like the specific question there?
Yeah. So how do you help clients quantify that mysterious enough number?
Yeah. So as we're thinking about it, so and as we were talking about before, right? A lot of the times we get used to like a certain level of salary, right? We've been doing this for a long time, or then our kind of life kind of revolves around that number. So I think it's so important to kind of really, and this is obviously so much of the work that you do, get clear on like, what are my monthly expenses, right? Like what is coming out of my pocket every single month? Where am I spending my money, right? What is the amount of money that I want to put into savings, and have a really clear overview of your finances so that you can ask yourself, okay, based on that, what do I actually need to be making, right? And are there parts and areas that I may be spending more frivolously that I'm willing to make a trade-off there where I actually don't spend as much money on those things, but in exchange, I feel much happier in my career, right? So of course you need to have like the baseline important things covered, and you don't ever want to put yourself in a financial situation where you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage or pay your bills or anything like that. But having a really clear picture of what's coming in and what's going out and where that's specifically going out can help you make decisions around, okay, do I want to potentially change, A, B, and C so I can instead pursue this career opportunity, right? So it really depends on the individual, the industry that they're in, the financial situation that they're in, but you need to have that clear understanding before you're making those types of decisions about your career.
What financial misconceptions do you find yourself debunking most frequently when you're coaching clients towards those better paying, more fulfilling roles?
So I think like the first one is just that idea that the baseline one is like, if I find a career that I really enjoy, I am 100% going to take a pay cut, right? That is what people assume. And most of the time, that's not true. So I'd say that's a really big one, right? I would say that there's just certain misconceptions around like industries that are better than others, right? If I work in tech, I'm going to get paid really well. But if I work in this industry, I'm not going to get paid really well, right? And it really, like, while there are certain truths about certain industries, it's also very company dependent, right? And sometimes you can find a small startup that pays incredibly well and incredibly competitively, right? So it's about opening your lens, having an open mind, doing the proper market research to really understand, you know, what companies are paying well, what companies are not paying well, and really do the proper market research there. So I'd say that's a really big one when it comes to misconceptions around finances. I think there are some also limiting beliefs, especially like I referenced this earlier in terms of being a woman and not getting compensated as well. And while yes, like on paper, that is true. That doesn't mean that you then can't advocate for more, right? We have assumptions around, I'm going to get paid XYZ amount because I'm a woman. Therefore, I'm just going to accept what I am given, as opposed to negotiating, as opposed to self-advocating on behalf of what you deserve. So that's a really, really big one around what can you ask for, what is okay to push back on, what's not okay to push back on. That can be really limiting if you don't push yourself in those situations.
Many of our listeners struggle with financial comparison, especially when you see colleagues or peers who seem to be advancing faster. So,
Mm-hmm.
how does this comparison affect career decisions? And what practices help your clients stay focused on their unique financial and career paths?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and obviously social media and all different other platforms out there make that even more challenging. And the thing is, you never know what is going on behind closed doors, right? And you have to remind yourself of that, because yes, you might have a friend who is seems to be making a lot of money and they pursued some career path that's, paying them very well, but they might be miserable, right? And they might value different things than what you value, right? And you have to remember that you are your own person. You have your own goals. You have your own values that are important to you, and things that are not important to you. And the second we start getting into that comparison trap, it never leads to a good place, right? So it goes back to that idea of what is most important to you? What do you value? And you might be in a season of your life where finances aren't as important, right? Maybe you don't have children, you're single, whatever it is, and you don't need as much to support you financially, but it is important to you to feel, excited about the relationship that you have with your manager, or feel like you're working at an organization that's allowing you to make an impact that feels meaningful to you. And perhaps in 5 years from now, that will change and finances will become more important. But then at that point, you can address it. Nothing is finite, nothing is permanent. But what's most important is to really think about what's important to you right now and make decisions based on that. And if things change in the future, you'll cross that bridge when you get there ultimately.
Is most of your work aligning someone with a new career that's like still in the corporate world or working for someone else essentially? And how often do you meet someone that is an executive or is works for the man, if you will, and you go, you know what, you need to work for yourself. Like the way your personality works, the way you think, like you just need to be on your own.
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of the clients that I work with are still in the corporate world, but not surprisingly, what we see a lot of is people wanting to start side hustles, right? And I think that's obviously there's been a big emergence of that since the pandemic. My own business started as a side hustle before I went full time, and I couldn't recommend a side hustle more, just from the perspective of purpose, being purpose driven, from multiple income streams, right? Like that's so important from a financial perspective. So I see that a lot. And then sometimes that side hustle will turn into something full time, because people go, wow, I've never felt better or more fulfilled in the work that I'm doing. I've never felt more confident in myself, and this makes sense. I want to pursue this more permanently. There are times that, you know, you're trying to fit what is it, a peg in a, you know what I'm saying? I can never, yes, we'll forget that one, but that you're trying to just like make something happen that is not going to happen. And in those times, there is, you know, the conversation of, okay, why are you trying to push this? Why are you trying to force this? Is it because of the financial impact of going to work for yourself? And if that's the case, then can we talk about, you know, doing this and creating some financial runway for you while you start thinking about a side hustle, right? And what might be the best way to have a strategic exit so that you don't put that financial burden on yourself, but you can start doing more of what you really love, right? So I would say that it does happen from time to time, but the most common thing we're seeing is people wanting to create that side hustle and multiple income streams for themselves.
So is that usually the prescription a lot of times, if someone comes to you kind of frustrated in their career, they don't feel fulfilled, and just like how we kind of blame money for all of these things when it's
Yeah.
not money's fault and money is
Yep.
just money, but we're blaming our job when it may not be the job's fault. The job could be, someone else could be perfectly happy with the job, and it might be you're just not getting, you know, the itch scratched by your job, but it doesn't make sense to leave it too. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't work, or it doesn't fit, and it doesn't sound right at this point in time. So could the side hustle be the prescription for that issue?
Absolutely. In a lot of situations, it can definitely be the prescription for the issue, right? Because sometimes just having an outlet outside of work that makes you feel purposeful gives you that boost of confidence. And then, ironically enough, that translates into work, right? And then all of a sudden, work starts to feel better because you're feeling better about yourself. So there's definitely something there that's really important. Another thing that I would say in that situation where it just feels like the job isn't scratching the itch and you're feeling really frustrated is the notion of you're not always as stuck as you think you are from a company perspective. And where a lot of people struggle is self-advocating on behalf of different internal opportunities. And they think, this is a job I had, there's nothing I can do beyond that. But if you're getting clear on, this is why I'm not feeling engaged, or these are the projects that I could add more value to, this is where my strengths really shine, that's notable. And you should bring that information to your manager, to someone internally, to say, hey, this is what I'm noticing, and I think I could be better leveraged if we do this or I do this. So don't just sit there in silence and suffer and say, I'm stuck. Bring your findings and bring that to somebody who you can have a good strategic conversation with, because there might be more internal opportunities for yourself than you're realizing.
So don't necessarily follow the money or change the job or do anything like that. It's, well, here are my strengths. Going to, you know, someone, your manager or a person you trust, and go, here's how I'd like to be utilized, even if that means I'm, you know, doing extra work for myself right now. It could open doors for you in the future, but it also could make you feel more fulfilled. And then kind of, you know, if you do what you love, the money follows, then who knows, a position opens up or a position's created based on your skill set. So it kind of sounds like what you're saying is leaving the job might not necessarily be the answer. It's finding what you're good at and opening yourself up to these other opportunities.
Exactly. Point being that there's a lot of different avenues, but no matter what, it really starts with that process of self-auditing and self-reflection to really understand, again, where am I engaged? Where am I disengaged? What are my values? Are those showing up in my place of work? Is there a way that I can be better channeling those things where I work? Or perhaps I find that that's just not going to happen, right? There's none of those opportunities are relevant where I am. And I either want to channel that into a side hustle, or I come to the realization that what I want to create in my career is not possible where I am. And then at that point, you can start thinking about external opportunities and making those moves. But the point is that you have to be intentional and strategic about how you make moves, especially in this job market, which is not an easy job market. It's very competitive out there. So you want to think and be thoughtful before you just start throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Before you're just throwing your resume out there and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
What's the most surprising insight you've discovered about the relationship between financial well-being and career satisfaction that most people don't realize?
I would say that your financial well-being, your salary, your finances actually don't influence your career happiness as much as you think it does, right? And there are so many studies that have been done on this that show that the more money you make in your career doesn't actually make you that much more exponentially happier. And I think recognizing that is really important. And there's a lot of other ways to gain fulfillment and alignment in your career. And just opening up your eyes to that can be really life-changing. And as I mentioned before, again, there's nothing wrong with pursuing your salary and making more money. And there are going to be seasons of life where that is the most important priority, and that is okay. But it's about recognizing that in other seasons of your life, it might not be as important. And if you choose to prioritize other things, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you're doing something wrong ultimately.
Pre-COVID, and COVID really changed everything for everyone, and
Yes.
that's an understatement. But pre-COVID, there was a big focus, it seemed like, on employers like Googleifying their workspaces, like making work feel like somewhere that someone wants to be when they're not working, like with
Mm,
gyms and all kinds of stuff they were adding in there, and like
yeah.
ping pong tables and all. Does that stuff work? Like, do people actually really like that? Because it's like, in my opinion, it's like you're still at work, and if you're not happy with your job, a ping pong table is not going to make much of a difference.
100%. It's this notion of it's the culture, right? People think culture is, oh, we got pizza on Fridays, and yeah, we have these ping pong tables and things like that, and trying to sell those as perks, but those are not the perks that are generally most important to people. And I've worked with thousands of people, and the things that I consistently hear from people, especially that millennial generation, which is, the predominant demographic in the workforce right now, it's, I want to have access to learning opportunities, right? So I want to feel like I can grow, I can learn. I want internal mobility. So that idea of maybe not having to make an exit, but can I grow internally in my organization? Not only vertical movement, but even lateral movement. I'm in one team, I'm on one department, I'm not feeling this anymore. Can I move to an entirely different department, right? And then another really big one is impact. I want to feel like the work I'm doing has some type of impact that feels meaningful to me in some way. Otherwise, we're just doing this thankless work. It doesn't feel good. I don't feel like I'm helping anybody or anything. But if I feel like, okay, I feel good about this impact, that helps me stay grounded in the work that I'm doing. So those are really, really big ones. That and recognition. And recognition can even be something as simple as my managers like telling me that I'm doing a great job, right? It doesn't even have to be I'm getting, this big promotion, but just feeling like someone sees the work that I'm doing, is calling it out, is showing appreciation for it. That is the kind of stuff that actually makes people feel good and worthy in their place of work.
So I shared earlier about my daughter, and we're picking out her high school classes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to even start the conversation, because it's
Yeah.
like, and it also like the columns that were available was like farming, lawyer,
Yeah.
medicine, and there was another one, and she's like, I don't like any of these things. Like, what? Like, and I know, kind of the answer is you got to try a little bit and see what you
Yeah.
like, but like her brain's not even fully developed, and it's not
Right.
going to be for a long time. How is society putting too much pressure on us to figure out our career, like to figure this stuff out, like what we're going to be when we grow up? Like, is almost like it's starting too early now, or
Oh,
putting too much of a focus on it?
100%. I mean, absolutely. And the best way that we learn is through doing, right? And at that age, you haven't done anything. So how can you make those types of decisions? Clarity comes through engagement, right? We have to engage with things, with people, to get clarity on how we move forward ultimately. So it is a lot of pressure. And I think it's reminding the younger generation of that you don't have to get it perfect and go in with the intention that I'm going to try something. There's a very strong likelihood that this is not going to be it for me. But back to that reframe of what did I learn from this experience? What did I like and why? And what did I not like and why? And then I can take that and apply that to the next opportunity. So allowing people to be a little bit messy from that perspective and just see what comes from it and recognize that every experience is valuable, even if it was an experience that you hated, because there is something that you're going to learn from hating something.
Right. Not liking something is just as important as identifying something you do like, right? So
Exactly.
so would you say then, do kids enter college like without a major? I read all this stuff like, oh, they're going to a certain school and they're playing this sport and this is what they want to do. And I feel like so many kids, like they know, quote unquote, their career. They know what they want to do when they're entering college. Is that the rule more than the exception anymore? Or are you seeing people entering college going like, I have no idea? And also, do you recommend that now? Like, is it better to go undecided and figure it out? I'm sure there's a strategy around it. So what is that strategy?
Yeah, well, what I would say is all those people who go in and they know what they want to do, those are the people 5 to 10 years out of school who are coming to people like me and saying, I'm really unhappy. I don't know why I pursued this and I want to make a change. Because again, you just don't know when you're that young and you don't have enough experience. And 9 times out of 10, those individuals are making those decisions based on their parents, based on what society is teaching them. It doesn't come from internal motivation. It's generally external motivation. And if you look at the stats, even around going to, get your MBA right now, we've been seeing that people who are graduating and getting their MBA from Harvard, from some of the biggest business schools in the countries, are struggling to land jobs more than they have in years and years and years. So while yes, some of that is a product of the job market right now, it's also a product of the fact that the advanced degrees and the schooling isn't necessarily what's landing you roles. So to not only spend all that money, but to feel like you have to make those decisions early on, it's not serving you. So I would really argue that it is about going into school and being open-minded. Yes, yeah, you do have to pick some type of major just to kind of guide the classes that you take and things like that. But don't be married to that. Keep your options open and recognize that you're not pigeonholing yourself that early on. You can always make changes. You can always make pivots, especially if you're early in your career, and just soak up opportunities and knowledge wherever you can. Because again, all of that knowledge, all of that experience, all of that learning is going to teach you more about what it is that you really want to do. And take that from somebody who worked for over a decade in what I thought was going to be my career forever, only to find myself completely miserable and then changing as I was turning, 30 and that next decade of their career, right? So yeah, I think keeping an open mind as you approach things is so important.
What would you say to someone right now who feels a little lost, confused, having the struggle? And I do think, what you mentioned earlier of the starting the side hustle or doing something that fills you up and then, letting that, see if that works and that does the trick. But, what would you say to someone right now who's listening in, and you have the career upgrade framework, and we're going to link that in the discount for our listeners, which is amazing. But what would you say in between now and them starting the framework? Yeah. What do you want them to think about, or what question to ask themselves before they start this journey with you?
Yep. There's 2 main things that I like to focus on. Understanding your areas of engagement and your areas of disengagement. So if you're feeling that sense of discontent in your career, the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, in my career thus far, not only in the role I'm in, but in prior roles as well, what is the work, the projects, the tasks that I've done on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis that have engaged me the most, and why? And in the work that I've done in my career thus far, what is the work, tasks, and the projects that I've done that have disengaged me the most, and why? Just starting to think about and reflect on that will bring a lot of learnings, right? Where you go, okay, this is what really engages me. Wow, I'm not doing any of that in my current role. Or this is a work that disengages me and I'm doing a ton of that in my current role. So start thinking and reflecting, collecting some data on yourself so that you can use that to think about, why am I feeling this way, or why am I not feeling this way, and how you move forward. So it's a very simple exercise, but it's something that we never spend the time doing. It makes you feel actionable just by reflecting, and that information can be very valuable as you think about starting to put the pieces together to move forward.